Hey everybody, this is Toffee bringing you Chapter 3, Part 2 of my Fire Emblem 4 LTC. Until now, the chapters have been escalating in length, but Chapter 3 breaks that up by being much shorter. We have to seize 3 castles, but the way they're laid out, we have to backtrack for both of the last two, and in general, I think it's when you have to backtrack that less mobile units get to contribute to the LTC. Deirdre will leave our army after the first castle, so we make sure to sell off everything except her circlet, which is locked to her, and have her transfer as much of her gold as she can to Sigurd so he can make use of it for the rest of the generation and for inheritance. Deirdre is the only parent who does not have a corresponding child in Generation 2, which means that she cannot pass any items. She only contributes some minor base stat points and starting gold to Sigurd's son. Since we've gotten to the point of units preparing to leave, I'll talk about Quan and Ethlyn, the other preset couple. Quan and Ethlyn invert Holy Blood and item inheritance, but not base stats or growths. Quan's daughter will be a second flyer in Generation 2, but she joins very late and is also the only unit who costs turns to recruit. Unless you're a pedant and bring up the children of the mothers who go unpaired, but surely you're not. And as such, we don't want to inherit anything at all on her. Her default starting inventory will be enough to serve her needs for the entire time she's around in a ranked run. Any gold that she can inherit will simply reduce how much we will have to have our thief give her. I don't know why I'm not just using the kids' names. This game is over 30 years old. Sigurd's son is Seliph and Quan's daughter is Altena. Altena will inherit her parents' Adept and Critical, but she joins at a very high base level and will easily promote to learn follow-up. Ethlyn's son Leaf, on the other hand, is a very demanding lad. Leaf joins at level 1 far away from the rest of our army, and like Altena, starts with just Adept and Critical. He starts off as a prince, the counterpart to Lachesis' princess, except he doesn't even have access to staves to supplement his EXP gain. However, we will have access to the A-rank rescue staff for all of Generation 2 thanks to a pairing that I will discuss later this chapter, and Leaf's promoted Master Knight class is the only way to use it on a horse. This means Leaf needs to promote by a certain point early in the generation, and this will require him to buy the Paragon Ring immediately. Like his sister, he does learn follow-up on promotion, but that is much further away and he has to participate in some intense combat in order to promote on time, and that means he's the ideal unit to inherit the follow-up ring. The formula for gold inheritance is to start with the base of 2000 gold, add together the parent's gold at the end of Generation 1, and divide by 10 and add it to the base, resulting in a range of anywhere from 2000 to 12,000 gold. In contrast, inheriting an item and then selling it is equivalent to inheriting half of that item's worth in gold. This means that inheriting items is a more efficient way to pass down gold than simply stockpiling it, and as such, Ethlyn will buy the bargain ring and then buy a number of swords with decent worth and a couple of rings to pass down to her son. If we did pair Lachesis, we would have to pass the return ring to Leaf, and also limit the number of swords he inherits due to Leaf's inventory being set up in a different way from the other kids, but we fortunately avoid that problem. Sylvia uses the bargain ring to buy the knight ring at half price. Foot units generally are lower impact than mounts for obvious reasons, and the unit who gets the most mileage out of the knight ring in Generation 1 is our dancer, starting right from this map. I had Sigurd buy up some assets in order to allow Deirdre to transfer as much gold as she can to him. He also delays his arena run until later this map for that reason. It's probably not strictly necessary, and Deirdre probably could have stood to buy Paragon partway through the Chapter 3 arena to farm more levels instead. Finn is not a father, but as a unit who will return in Generation 2, his inventory will matter too. Finn is one of only 2 units who can inherit lances in Generation 2, and the other unit, Ernest's daughter, Fee, can never be his corresponding child, which is why he's a very bad choice of father. He would lose his lances due to inheritance, but they would not actually be in his kid's inventory. We will send most of our lances to Fee to increase her starting gold stack, but she can't inherit A-rank lances, so Finn can safely take the silver lance. Finn will start away from our army on a couple of Generation 2 chapters, and as such, he needs to take either the Brave Lance or a lance that he can get to crit by a certain point. We'll have him take the second javelin, since he will have many uncontested turns to get to 50 kills before the cutoff point in Generation 2. We also give him the Rider's Bane, but I don't think that ends up mattering at all. Alec takes the crit javelin to do a certain job that Finn would be much better at, but this way ends up being worth more level ups than the one where an EXP thief is delegated to handle that job. This will necessitate some annoying rigs later, but that's how the cookie crumbles. Last time, Dew used the Miracle Sword glitch in the arena, but he won't have the same issues in the future, so he'll get rid of it. Ernest bought the Thief's Sword, and that should tell you her primary goal on this map. She'll get C staves on promotion, so we want her to promote by the start of the next chapter in order to use staves there. She is short on money, so while she will grab some EXP, her primary goal is to steal money from some pirates and visit a village in order to reach 40,000 gold to buy Paragon for this arena and the next. Alex sold his steel sword to Beowolf, who takes over responsibility for putting kills on it moving forward. I mentioned last time that Lewin needed to be trained a bit for a certain side objective in Chapter 4. As a foot unit, he has a really tough time actually getting to the front lines before then, but thankfully his EXP requirements aren't too steep. He will run to the right to take on a group of armors and a general. He will need to proc Adept or Critical to one-round them. The shortest path to the first castle, Madino, requires running through the right to take advantage of the roads. Sigurd, Quan, and Ethlyn will get the turn 1 dance and be the front line assaulting Madino. Ethlyn needs to be promoted for this. The 4th dance slot could only have been used by Ernest, but since we want her to farm money and eventually be sent home, she will instead fly up and left. Deirdre cannot leave the home castle in this chapter for story reasons, and that means the only EXP she can gain is spamming stays within the home castle. She's 1 mend away from a level up, which she will get on turn 2. Ethlyn's wallet is much lighter thanks to buying the bargain ring, but Quan hands over his money to her for the 2nd time in order to allow her to actually set up Leaf's inheritance for later. Lex's talk with Ira gave them 100 love points and the Brave Sword. The Brave Sword is probably the best boss killing weapon in the whole game, given it can be used by our lords. I do stack kills on it, but it never gets to crit, and it still manages to kill basically every boss our lords will need to, except for one in Chapter 5. It is also a very effective arena weapon for units who are flush with cash, which is what it'll be put to use for in this chapter. Dew's first gold recipient this chapter was Arden to cap out his wallet. This isn't as much of a spoiler for those who watched Pala Emblem's ranked LTC of this game, but Arden will have his biggest moment in the LTC during this chapter thanks to his high bulk and temporary free follow-up. He does need more money in order to buy the light brand, which is where Dew came in. Now that Lechessa is on a horse, the difference in movement between her and Dew is a lot more noticeable. Thankfully, she has enough slack that she can stick next to Dew. With a slightly different configuration of units, I think it would be possible to have Finn help out at Madino, but we don't need him to. Dew's second gold transfer is to Beowolf, as previously discussed, and Edain will send him home so he can run through the arena. This is going to be a long sequence, and fortunately this time around the arena segment actually is done basically continuously, so I'll put a timestamp in the description for where you can skip to see Beowulf's last level up to see his stats at the end of it. The arena is basically the biggest problem with doing a playthrough of this game where you show everything, and pragmatically it's not really worth it. My one practical motivation for actually showing it in these videos is that prior LTCs didn't do it, but also didn't really keep clear notes on how they cleared the arena, which made it hard for people to just fork those runs, and probably contributed to the reluctance to explore this game. Despite how long these rigs are, would you believe me when I tell you I actually made a mistake here? I miss a defense proc on Beowolf, and that ends up impacting another unit's EXP gain and probably costs them a level up in the long run. Beowolf's Arena. We burned a few more RNs, mostly to rig Lewin's enemy phase action. Madino is guarded by enemies too deep, so we need 2 9-boon units to show up and help clear out the way. Quan needs an adept proc, and Ethlyn needs a crit, which thankfully is helped by Quan being nearby. We moved Ethlyn in such a way that she can Canto to be right next to the spot where Sigurd will attack the boss from, which allows him to crit him to death. Past LTCs would have Sigurd bite the speed ring to quad him with the Brave Lance. Our other units grabbed some incidental kills before we wrapped up Madino. Sigurd obtained the Levin Sword, which is our second magic sword. We will put it to heavier use later in the run, but for now it will simply be another weapon Ethlyn will pass down to Leaf. The cutscene that plays afterwards will lead to Deirdre leaving our army. Deirdre is probably the worst unit at building levels due to her insanely limited availability and poor combat, but she did help with the one maneuver in Chapter 2, and she helped Seliph inherit more magic and resistance. We can see that FE4 cutscenes don't have any anti-unit stacking measures, which will have an amusing appearance in a certain later chapter. We then embark on this rig for enemy phase because Alec is in for hell. Alec positioned himself in a precise spot, which I will explain once the enemy phase started, and Arden buys the Paragon Ring to prepare for his big moment. He clears the first 2 fights of the arena now in order to gather money for later. The Sylvale army will spawn in now that Madino has fallen, and the army that will charge at us consists of Eldigan and his Cross Knights. The spot Alec is at is the one location that is in range of all of the Cross Knights, but not Eldigan, which is good because Eldigan is wielding his holy sword, Mistletoe. In fact, the rig is to ensure that Alec has more than 32 HP by the end of the enemy phase, because we won't be healing him on the next turn, and since Eldigan has 5 leadership stars, he will not be susceptible to FE4's AI randomness, and as such will always prioritize a kill if he sees it, and he is far too accurate to be dodged. This is where the missed HP level up on Alec that I bemoaned earlier is relevant. If he had 1 more point of HP, he would be able to take 1 more hit from a Cross Knight, and I found several seeds which would have worked if Alec had that 1 more HP. Doesn't need the Javelin to be at crit to kill the Cross Knights, since they're all going to be forced to attack him with the Javelin thanks to his high defense. For Ethlyn will send Sigurd home, so he can start working his way towards Sylvale. She will hand in her return staff afterwards for Lachesis to pick up and will grab some villages to build up her cash reserves. She gets the Wing Clipper, a sword that is effective against flyers, which is somewhat undercut by usually facing weapon triangle disadvantage against their lances. It will once again be another high value sword for Leaf. Offloads his inventory, since as previously mentioned, his daughter does not really care to inherit anything. You could have her inherit a silver lance, since one does go uninherited in my run, and nobody other than Finn really wants one, but I keep it to give Arden a high might weapon for future arena fights after he promotes. You may have noticed Azel slowly walking north. Azel kills exactly 1 enemy on this map, and will grab a special village that gives +3 strength to the visitor. Azel actually wants to hit 11 strength as a promoted unit on the next map in order to do a certain job, so he's the best candidate for this village. Now that Lewin is done farming the armor squad, he will walk up to kill a pirate burning a village and visit it to get the restore staff. This is the only way to cure status staff conditions, but I think it gets used exactly once in the whole run. The situations where we encounter FE4 status staves, it is typically preferred to just have units with enough resistance to defuse them instead of trying to actually cure them. Folks who have watched other FE4 LTCs may have noticed that I moved Sylvia slightly differently from how other runs would have, and this is ultimately to ensure that Dew and Lachesis do not miss any adjacents in this chapter. Lachesis does need to access the shop to buy the return stuff, and Edain will send her back for this. Arden begins his arena quest here, and he wants to have 18 defense or less after 2 fights, which is a big anti-benchmark of the run. Alec needs the Javelin to have crit in order to actually kill the armor, and has to land 1 crit out of 2 hits. I didn't acknowledge it earlier, but Lachesis bought Physic at the start of the map partly as a way to use her money, and partly as a way to grow levels in a way that is convenient to rig. Her bulk is a bit on the lower end because of her miracle setups from earlier, so we generally rig her more defense to increase her kid's stat inheritance. Sylvia does a 4-way dance and uses the Night Ring for the first time to run ahead. We need her to dance for Sigurd twice in order to see Sylvale on turn 6. Lachesis then returns Edain back home, where we will need the Warp Staff. Annoyingly, Dew and Lachesis can have Sylvia help with jealousy, but Deirdre and Ethlyn aren't in a position to help finish the square at any point, and the women who join later in the map who also could help obviously start too far away to get involved. Edain sends Arden to Madino to climb up to the top of that landmass. His 5 move is really annoying here. It takes him 3 whole turns to actually get to the point where he needs to go. Well, Alec ran ahead and just stayed out of the range of Sylvale's guard in order to engage them next turn. We moved Ira up forward to be in range of Eldigan. Eldigan sees Ira as the target with the least defense and range, and because of Nihil, Mistletoe's critical cannot activate. Ira can actually kill Eldigan on the counter with a double Astra, but the hit rates are pretty bad and it's not likely to actually happen. It would have been sweet if Dew could steal Eldigan's money here, but he cannot safely dodge and gets one shot. Lachesis does finally get to heal Alec up before he engages the armor squad. Lachesis talks to Eldigan to convince him to ride away to his untimely demise, and we get the Lance Sword, which you might know as the Urge Sword. The Lance Sword is a very interesting magic sword. It casts Nosferatu at range, a heavy 12-weight light magic tome that drains the enemy's HP as you'd expect, and also has a hidden effect of ignoring enemy pavais, and in fact is the only weapon that has this effect that we can obtain in an LTC. It only has 10 uses, probably because the devs didn't want to make Nas tanking something any sword user could do, and it costs 1000 gold per use, the same as the holy weapons that we will start obtaining soon. Generally, in a ranked run where we care about keeping a lot of units in good financial shape, we have a natural disincentive to use it, but we will break it out on a few occasions in the run. Importantly, it is a second 1 to 2 range sword that we will actually keep in Generation 1, so Dew will want it in the next chapter to farm some money. Charges into a squad of 10 armors, and wants to ensure he kills at least 9 of them by the end of the turn. This part of the job is where Finn would be much better. Finn has the strength cap to actually cleanly kill these armors, and could even possibly rely on miracles to survive the enemies, whereas Alec must simply dodge enough with the javelin weighing him down, and needs to land 1 crit out of 2 hits on each enemy to actually kill them. He has made it to level 20, but he won't have the time to make it to the home castle to promote during this chapter. Ernest finally got to engage an enemy, swiping 5000 gold. I started rigging magic levels on Sigurd around this point just to hopefully ensure Seliph inherited more magic, and I actually show off one strategy in chapter 5 that takes advantage of Sigurd growing 8 magic. Lachesis returned Sylvia home so Edain can relay warp her to Madino to help accelerate the final castle of the map. Once Elegant leaves the map, a squad of Thracian Dracos show up at the top of the map near the Tower of Bragi. Their leader drops a renewal ring, which could have been a nice 20,000 gold sellable, but he's too far away to be reached given we're going to see Sylvale next turn. The boss kill this time is with Bravelance Sigurd needing to land all 4 hits. Well, in principle, Lachesis could have returned Alec on this turn, but he makes for a good physics staff target instead. Stops the Silver Blade, another high value sword for Leaf. After Sylvale is seized, Ethlyn can talk to her husband Quan to get us our first holy weapon of the run, Guybulg. Holy weapons can only be used by units with major holy blood, and Guybulg is a rather meh weapon for the actual situations it is available for. Regardless of whether you activate this conversation, Quan's daughter will have it in her starting inventory. Guybulg gives plus 10 boost to strength, skill, and defense. The plus 10 boost to strength effectively makes it a 40 might weapon, which is nice. The plus 10 to defense causes AI problems due to 0 damage AI, and in fact for the third castle, Quan's job will be to simply wall off a spot with the Guybulg. Ethlyn moves back to Madino so she can buy Return again next turn, while other units gather around the top of the peninsula. Arden with his Lightbrand takes point, and Midir with his shield ring is right behind him. Midir will cause the enemy hand axe users to see 0 damage and hence not clog up the spot in front of Arden. Something cute about this map is that Silver Axe Lex weakens the pirate to exactly 1 HP, which makes him an easy target for Thief Sword Fee. I talked about jealousy on the previous chapter, and one of the smaller benefits of pairing Lex with Ira is that she's at the top of his jealousy list, meaning Ira can actually help other units' jealousy formations without impairing her own matrimonial plans. This was an empty turn for Edain to warp on, and the level up will let her hit level 20. Argahill's enemy quality is rather inferior to the previous 2 castles. We're actually encountering swarmed axe users again, and they're so bad that Arden gets his famous moment in the spotlight. With follow-up from his ring, Arden one-runs all the one-range pirates with the Lightbrand to stack more kills on it, and he clogs up the one-tile choke to prevent enemies from going elsewhere. There are some hand axe pirates, and we intentionally have Arden start off with less than 19 defense to ensure that one of them will attack from 2 range. You can also see we're joined by Brigid. Brigid is another sniper, and yes, that is the same lame class line that Yonka is from. But Brigid is going to matter a bit more to the run by virtue of being a mother. She will always face 2 enemies on this enemy phase unavoidably. This encounter is the only time she gets to fight in all of Generation 1, and the high density of enemies with 2 range helps her see some actual enemy phase action. Brigid only has her class skill follow-up, though she does start with a healthy 10,000 gold. Brigid joins so late that there is only one man who can capture her heart before the end of Generation 1, Midir. Brigid does the same inheritance inversion that Quan and Ethlyn do, and as such, she passes her inventory down to her son Febail, who is an archer and mostly a clone of her. Febail likes inheriting bows and money in order to buy Paragon more easily in Generation 2, but he's ultimately a footlock and bowlock and isn't really the main reason to pair Brigid. No, that would be her daughter, Patty, the Generation 2 thief. Patty is not strictly needed in Generation 2. As you'll see, all she'll do in this run is to give money to units to help pad the EXP rank, but having a thief who starts off with some money ends up helping basically every unit in Generation 2 who doesn't get to inherit a lot, as you'll see. A big part of what makes Dew helpful is innate bargain, letting him generate more cash, and we'll eventually want Midir to pass the bargain ring to Patty, along with a couple of stat rings that nobody else in particular is craving. Midir and Brigid will also aim to max out their wallets in order to maximize the amount of gold that they pass to Patty, and Febail benefits from this as a side effect. Midir and Brigid have a conversation that gives them 100 love points in this map, and beyond that they would need to gain 39 adjacents in 32 turns to parent time. This means, you guessed it, they are the second couple who will rely on jealousy to pair up. There are only 2 units who can help them get hitched, one being Sylvia and the other is a unit who joined us at the top left. The boss who attacked Arden drops the leg ring, which of course is a very important item. At the start of turn 7, we were joined by the last units of Generation 1, Claude and Telltale. Claude is the man Edain has been waiting for. He has no skills and is another magical unit. This will screw over Edain's son Lester, the Bow Knight, very hard, and Lester cannot even use Claude's holy weapon, Valkyrie, despite inheriting major blaggy blood from him. Valkyrie allows us to resurrect a unit in the same generation who is dead, and I do break it out once in this run. Take a guess as to what the purpose is if you don't already know. The purpose of this pairing is a conversation in Chapter 5 where Claude gives Edain the A rank rescue staff, and thanks to the blaggy blood, Edain's daughter Lana will be able to inherit it, giving us access to the rescue staff for all of Generation 2. This is the most impactful pairing of the whole run, and because of how talk conversations are coded, we need them to be married a turn earlier than you'd think, meaning Claude and Edain need 50 adjacents in 34 turns, making them the third and final pair who must rely on jealousy. They do have some leeway, which will help ensure other units can get married too. But starting next chapter, Claude and Edain will have to focus on this. Claude's pal Telltale, on the other hand, is the second mother who cannot marry in an LTC. In her case, she simply cannot pair with anyone at LTC base. The closest is Azel, who has a conversation with her next map, but even that would cost at least a turn. Telltale instead will help out as a jealousy bot similar to Sylvia, as she can perform this job both for Lechesis and Brigid. And as it turns out, if at all we needed to have 2 mothers go unmarried in Generation 1, Telltale and Sylvia are probably the 2 ideal picks from a ranked run EXP perspective. Telltale comes with Rat, and with Throat Blood as a Thunder Mage, she can use Thoron at base. A-rank tomes have 20 might, and combined with Rat, this will help her punch through rough arena fights. Claude joins at level 20 with Fortify, so he's easy enough to level cap, but Telltale joins at level 3 and needs some special care in a rank context. Thankfully, after promotion, she has B staves to use Warp, and her goal will be to reach promotion by Chapter 5. We rigged this map to maximize her EXP. Lechesis hands in Return here, and Alex sells off the Javelin to Sigurd. Dew also turns in the Return Ring for Ethlyn to use. Sigurd and Edain run through the arena, after Edain promotes of course. Edain's promotion gives her an A rank in staves and C rank in all the schools of anima magic. She has pretty good stats despite lacking skills thanks to all those level ups that we could rig for her. Beyond marrying Claude, her other goal is to stockpile as much money as possible because we eventually will want her to buy almost every staff in Generation 1 to pass on to her daughter. I'll drop a timestamp for when Sigurd and Edain finish their arena runs in the description. Edain actually has a conversation with her sister Brigid, which would give her the Yewfelle, the holy bow. It is another 40 might holy weapon, and you can actually tweak this clear slightly to grab it without negatively impacting anyone else. However, this requires using a glitch I didn't think of using at the time, but which I do use in a later chapter. I'll put the details in the description. Sigurd needs 2 range in order to kill the boss to get the leg ring, which he needs to save a turn on this map. We cut our way across the bridge, and Beowolf charges out to pull over some enemies. Beowulf's Onslaught is a backup option to help him kill any enemies that he unfortunately misses. Because of the defense proc he misses, he pulls away at least one enemy who would have otherwise gone for Brigid, which I think ends up causing her to miss a level. We want Kelta to dodge that pirate on the previous enemy phase to avoid her going into Wrath range to get an extra round of chip. That's an example of an enemy that Beowolf kills with an Onslaught proc. Sorry, it wasn't the previous enemy phase, it was this enemy phase. Medivh and Brigid get their conversation here. I have Arden kill a lower leveled enemy here, and this ends up causing some problems later with him needing to get an extra round of chip EXP. If you wanted to get Yewfelle, you'd need to leave one enemy in the center alive. Edain sells Warp to Lachesis, who will use it to send Aranis back home, and also will be the first unit who wants to use it in the next chapter. Then on turn 9, it'll be cleanup everywhere. Arden and Aranis will clear the arena, using the Brave Sword for the later fights thanks to both of them having a lot of cash. Arden will actually hit level 20 and promote. His promotion gains are modest, but he does get Provice on promotion, which will help him cheese fights in the future. He will get an A rank in swords and lances, and a B rank in axes and bows. Ethlyn will organize her inventory, Yamka will clear his last arena, and Sigurd will kill the boss to get the power ring and seize to complete chapter 3 in 9 turns. Bye bye Quan, Ethlyn, and Finn.